Orks. These guys are looking like they are lined up for a 11th edition poster boy bad guy slot, much the way the Necrons and Tyranids filled this edition and last edition, respectively. So, what do the Orks need, or rather, what would I want for the Orks? Now, I am a rather outspoken Ork collector, so obviously I think that I have quite a bit of stake in a potential Ork big range refresh and release wave. Now, Orks in general, their models look quite good, even when they're quite old, so going along with that, we're going to mainly stick to just sort of updating things, because honestly, I don't think any of the Ork kits desperately need an update, but I think it would be nice to get them, just because, well, shiny new models are cool. So, starting off, let's go to my first pick, and this one is going to be a very obvious one. I think that's very likely to happen, and that is a new Deff Dread. Now, the Deff Dread's a great kit. I've got 5 of them, soon to be 6 of them, but they're looking a little small these days, admittedly, and these guys are supposed to be a mirror of the Imperial Dreadnoughts, mainly of the Space Marine variety, mainly because that's the only kind that the Orks would relatively see, and I doubt they have the mental capacity to tell the difference between a Custody and a Space Marine Dreadnought. Now, there already is technically a bigger Dread class walker, 2 of them, but the one we'll be focusing on here is the Mega Dread, though personally I think I'd prefer to rather see the Deff Dread just grow in size to match that of the, of course, new Space Marine Dreadnought, the Redemptor. So long as it's got 4 arms, I don't really care if it's Mega or Deff. I prefer the name Deff Dread, though, so let's go with that. Now, this kit really doesn't have to do anything that crazy. Just make a Deff Dread and make it bigger and stompier, and we're done. That's it. That's all you have to do. Personally, I prefer melee dreads, but I think there is a valid enough reason to include a few weapon options for ranged as well, because shooty dreads do exist. Anyways, I really just want a new Deff Dread, so I have an excuse to get even more Deff Dreads, and even if I have to rebase my old Deff Dreads, price worth paying to have ginormous Deff Dreads stomping around. Next up, we just got a couple characters. Obviously, the Weird Boy desperately needs an update. His model's not horrible, it's just a little weird, especially the little Gretchen hanging off on the side. And also, I'd like to see the Knob with Wa banner get resurrected. I feel like most factions have an Ancient of some kind, so I'd like to see banner bearer for the Orks come out. Kind of the long and the short of it there. I think his old model looked fine. He was, metal, fine cast type model, so obviously needs an update. Give him a big old Ork banner, lots of glyphs, flowing, strings of stuff like that. All that, just give me that. I think that'd be a great centerpiece, non-named character. And you could also bundle in the other named characters here as well. I think there's a pretty solid chance we see Badruck or Grotsnick come back in our next release wave for Orks. Now, up next, we have one that I think everyone's expecting. It's going to be some Infantry. 3 kits specifically, which I guess also means a couple different units, but we'll get into that. First up, we've got boyz. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if boyz ended up getting updated similar to how the Termagants and Hormagaunts work, where they're 2 separate units. I think that would be just much better, just to make shooty boys more reasonable, and also to allow for more fun special weapons and things like that. And then alongside that, I'd also like to see Ludus get an update. I quite like Ludus models, but I think it would be cool to see them get a more pick-a-brick kind of building style that we see on the Flash kits. I think that would be a great place for that style of building to be applied to, is the Ludus. So you'd have lots of las cannon bits and plasma gun bits and tau gun bits, all that sort of stuff, all looted weaponry. And finally, one that's very obvious, I think, is the mobz. Now, mobz, I think, look quite good, and I like their kit. It is a little restrictive in terms of, how the bodies work, but that's not unusual. And I'd really like to see them get updated, and I think it's a shoo-in. Not only are they the elite unit for Orks, but Flash kits, which are mobz, are on 40mm bases. Mega mobz are on 40mm bases. Most veterans are on 40mm. I think mobz have a very solid chance of going to 40mm bases. And also, I think some new mobz would just look great, because I think mobz should look even bigger now, given that most Ork infantry is larger now. So it only makes sense for mobz to be as big as they are. Next up, I have a couple Forge World things that I think would be fun to see get moved to plastic. Do I think they will? Probably not. But one, I think, one or the other, pretty solid chance. And these are the Death Roll of Battle Fortress and the Chinork Warcopter. Now, the Deff Roll of Battle Fortress is a super heavy orc vehicle that is supposed to be like the biggest wagon they have, bristling with guns, huge death roller in the front, and it can just transport an inordinate amount of orcs. It's supposed to be about the size of a Bane blade, so that's the scale we're going for here. Chin Orc is a light transport, often used by things like commandos, to fly low. They're not aircraft, so to speak, more like hover vehicles, to fly low and infiltrate into enemy backlines. I love both these. Model-wise and lore-wise, I would love to see them both get a new plastic kit. I think it would be very fitting to have a giant vehicle like that for someone like Ghazghkull to jump out of, and it would just, of course, be bristling with guns and so on and so forth. There are a lot of Forge World things I'd like to see get updated, but these two I think are the most likely, and also what I'd like to see the most, for the most part. Next up, we do have a unit that doesn't have a modern equivalent, really, and one that actually hasn't really had any sort of precedent in the Orc army, and that is just a Squig unit. Now, I'm going to use this image of a Squigoth just for a visual, but, well, I would love a new Squigoth, don't get me wrong. I'm more speaking like a herd of Gnasher Squigs and things like that. Just because Squigs are really funny, and I'd like to see just a big mob of them be something that Orcs could use. Granted, alongside a Squiggoth, all the better. Squiggoth desperately needs a new model. So those two things, really. Squiggoths and Squigs, I'd like to see get plastic and just be an actual unit. Maybe similar to how Gretchen work, where they have like a runt herd to keep them corralled, to keep them under control. And also, speaking of runt herds, Gretchen might need an update, but that's not part of this section. I'd just really like to see Squigs be more of a proper part of the army. We're seeing more of that, or we've seen more of that with the Beast Nagas, of course, but I'd like to see even more. I'd like to see some of those Squigs they use to pull, like, the Hunter rigs and the Kill rigs. I'd love to see that just be its own unit, that big, horned Squig. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see Squig, just Squig beasts you can use. Various sizes, maybe small Squigs, but also bigger Squigs, like Squigosauruses, or Orkiosaurus, if you want to go all the way back to old Legends, not Legends, Epic, 40k, all of that sort of stuff. Anyways, that's my wish list for the Orcs. There's definitely other stuff, like I mentioned, Gretchen could use an update, but this is some stuff. I'm sure I'm casting such a wide net, I'll get some of these right, but really this is more of a wish list than like super accurate predictions. I'm not, I don't have my tinfoil on, but I do think that some of these are pretty much shoo-ins. Anyways, I have been Spoons Rattling. I have enjoyed making this. Happy Orktober. What do you guys want to see for Orcs? Let me know down below, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.